Okay, go ahead.
The actual crack was on the other side, so I wasn't able. It started as kind of a smell in the car. Like when I would turn it on, first thing, cold start up, I would just smell like this exhaust gas. And like, this car wasn't very old at the time. It was only like 4 or 5 years old. And then slowly over time, the crack got louder. So on cold starts, it would sound really loud, and then after the car would warm up, the crack would kind of seal itself off. So I kind of just put it off for quite a while, and today I finally said, you know what, I'm gonna change the exhaust. This project was actually a 2-day project. The first day was pretty much taking everything off the car, including the old exhaust, and then the next day was putting on the new exhaust. So we're starting out here, taking off the valve cover. Okay, now I'm taking off the part of the intake, and this screw would not turn for me. So basically it just slides on. You really don't have to loosen it at those screws per se. They kind of like snap into place there. So you guys make sure you take off the whole intake. Pretty much got to go where I'm taking off there. You don't have to take off anything else past the filter. That's not in the way, but the front part here, that would definitely be in the way. So it's really just those 2 screws I showed you earlier, and I had to work it off, but it wasn't too bad. You see the opening on each side, it kind of allows you to snap it into place, so you really don't have to unscrew it. One of my screws came off, so it's not too bad. This part is just, you know, showing everything you have to loosen. This is for the coolant reservoir. This is that 110mm bolt. And then that should pop off. Pretty straightforward stuff. And then there's a little clamp there that you have to squeeze to take off the tube there for the runoff. So like I said, like this exhaust leak, it's been very minor, but it just finally got to the point where I was like, I'm just tired of it, because I had to keep my my blower fan, I had to keep that on recirculation. Anytime I would turn off recirculation in the HVAC, it started smelling the exhaust, and I just got tired of it. Having that smell over time can really mess you up. So at this point now, I'm taking off the serpentine belt. Pretty standard stuff. And the reason why I have to take off the serpentine belt is because I have to get the alternator out of the way. Where they put the alternator is basically blocking a couple, maybe not even a couple, maybe just one bolt that is directly underneath it for the exhaust manifold. That's the grounding cable for the alternator. So I think that had a little washer with it too. So just be careful when you're taking that off, because you might lose that little washer. And there was another cable. Be careful not to snip these cables either. I just did that real quick just to get it out of the way and move on to the next thing. So the alternator itself has 2 bolts. One on top and there's one on the bottom, and the bolts themselves weren't that bad. Like, they're pretty standard fare. The more difficult part, as you're going to see soon, is getting the alternator off of the mounting bracket. That was challenging. And I think the bolt size for this was like I want to say 14 or 15 millimeter. So that bolt was actually quite long, but like once it's just straightforward. But like I said, you're going to see up here soon, it was a battle. So you think, okay, this is coming off. I'm shaking it and jiggling it and trying to get it off. Nope. After about a few minutes, I was like, nope, I'm going to have to start prying this thing open. So, oh yeah, and sometimes it's a good idea to spray it down with some rust penetrant. I was trying to get in there into the crevice between the alternator and the mounting bracket. It was kind of difficult, and it seemed to help a little bit. As you can see, I'm prying on the alternator, trying to push it out. Yeah, so it takes a little bit of time to get the alternator off of this bracket. At least it did for me. I can't say it's going to do that for every Altima, but it was definitely a struggle to get the alternator off. But eventually, as you can see, it breaks free, and you can take it off. So what I did, and you don't have to do it this way, but I did it. I kept the power cords and the power connector. I just kept it on there. I wasn't trying to replace the alternator. If you're trying to replace the alternator, by all means, you got to take it off. So what I ended up doing was, oh yeah, and that's when I broke my electrical connector there. The little tab that kind of locks it in place, it broke off there. And at this point, I was trying to get the alternator out to the left side. It wasn't working. So what I had to do was remove this bracket here with 2 bolts. I think it was a 13mm bolt there. Just 2 bolts, you just break them loose, and then that bracket comes out. Once that bracket comes out, it makes it easier to move the alternator on top of the engine to let it sit there. I don't think you have to take this bracket off, but for me, I found it just easier to take it off instead of trying to work around it. And it would also give you more access to when you get the exhaust manifold off. It won't be in the way when you're trying to pull the manifold off and put the new one in. To me, it just made more sense just to take it off. So now with that out of the way, I was able to take the alternator, set it on top of the engine, and that's where it would just rest the rest of the install. Okay, so now we're on to the O2 sensor plug. This is pretty straightforward. There's a little tab there. So what you have to do is open that tab, and then I had a little flathead screwdriver. I ended up just moving it down, as you can see here. And just slide that sucker in there. And then once you got that open, you just pull apart. And boom, there you go. That's all there is to that. The next step would be to take off the heat shield for the exhaust manifold. There was 5 bolts, 10mm, pretty standard stuff. I did find that these bolts were kind of rusted, like the heads were rusted, as you can see. So sometimes the bolts would get stuck in my socket. But I mean, overall, it's pretty straightforward stuff. I did not keep my heat shield at the end. So if you were planning on putting the heat shield back on, it should go on the same way as before. Just hold on to your bolts. And if you can see, right below the ratchet, there's a little line there. There's a little crack. That is where actually my crack in my exhaust was. That little tiny micro line, or micro fracture. It was from, I think it cracked at the weld. It cracked at the weld, I believe. I can't remember all the way. So here we go. There's the exhaust manifold. All right. So the next step I did was I just removed the O2 sensor. I reused my O2 sensors. Nothing was wrong with them. They looked good. They still performed good. And even now, like, it didn't cause any trouble with me. So the next step after you get the O2 sensor off would be to work on the 5 actual bolts that hold on the exhaust manifold. I sprayed it with a little bit of rust penetrant. It didn't need much. I mean, the bolts looked good. They didn't look weathered or rusted at all. They were just dirty, really. So I would spray it with some rust penetrant on all 5. And then just get to work loosening them. The bolt size, I think it was gosh, what was it? The bolt size. I think it was a 15. I think it was a 15 millimeter or 14. I can't remember. But anyway, it's just a standard. It's a standard size. So I'm sorry, not a standard size, a metric size. Oh gosh. Yeah, these weren't on too tight. I think they tighten at the end. I can look it up. Get all 5 bolts off, and so once those 5 bolts are off, the next step would be to go ahead and remove these bolts that connect the catalytic converter assembly to the downpipe. But mine, as you saw, were rusted, so my little bro stepped in here, and you might be able to see him in the video, may not. Anyway, he's pretty good with a hacksaw, so I kind of let him just do it and handle it, because I was like, oh, I mean, if you know what you're doing, go for it. So you can watch him make quick work of this exhaust. But that's where I did. I just ended up cutting it because the whole exhaust system, I mean, it was 13 years old. Those bolts were rusted through. So once you make that cut, there's only one more bolt left, and that is actually connected to the exhaust manifold. It's a standard, it's a 13 millimeter bolt. It's really hard. It was difficult to get to, but I mean, it wasn't impossible. And once we get the exhaust, that bolt off the exhaust manifold, I was able to just simply lift up and pull out the remaining everything. And don't forget to take off the old exhaust manifold, as you can see. Okay, and then now we're just cleaning everything, washing things, wiping down, trying to get all the gunk off of the head. It was pretty standard stuff, not a big deal. Okay, so once with the exhaust manifold out of the way, now we move down further, and instead of taking those bolts off, as you can see how rusted they are, my brother just said, yeah, I got you, bro. We're just gonna cut this thing off. And that's exactly what he did. This saved, I would say this saved probably hours of our time trying to take this thing apart. Instead of just trying to wrestle with those bolts, we just said, you know, let's just cut it, hack it away. So this is after the resonator, further down the system. He had to make 2 more cuts. This cut was, I believe, on the passenger side rear, and he's just cutting right along, you know, where they connect. For the blade, I mean, it's just a regular metal cutting blade for mild steel. I mean, that's all most exhaust systems are. I got a thicker one that can really cut through some serious metal, just to be completely safe. But yeah, it was pretty straightforward. Just cut off the exhaust. And at this point, it was really just taking them off of the mounting points, and that was it. This is at near the back where the exhaust splits off into a Y. So this is a dual exhaust car. So that was that one hang there, and this is this is over top of the passenger side rear, or passenger side, I should say. And once you pull back, it should come right off. As you can see, carefully. Yeah, those mufflers had some weight to them. Okay, so there you go. And then there was one on the driver's side, and that was it. Okay, and that's it as far as taking off the exhaust. Stick around and we'll have the install video up next.